Hello everyone, today we will going to start NCERT reading of human physiology. And here we have the first chapter, that is breathing and exchange of gases. Well, as you have read earlier, oxygen is utilized by the organisms to indirectly break down simple molecules like glucose, amino acids, fatty acids, etc. to derive energy to perform various activities. Carbon dioxide, which is harmful, is also released during the above catabolic reactions. It is therefore evident that oxygen has to be continuously provided to the cells and carbon dioxide produced by the cells have to be released out. This process of exchange of oxygen from the atmosphere with carbon dioxide produced by the cells is called breathing. Here, what is that? Here it is that oxygen has to be continuously provided to the cells and carbon dioxide produced by the cells have to be released out. This process of exchange of oxygen from the atmosphere with carbon dioxide produced by the cells is called breathing, commonly known as respiration. Place your hands on your chest. You can feel the chest moving up and down. You know that it is due to breathing. How do we breathe? The respiratory organs and the mechanism of breathing are described in the following sections of this chapter. Respiratory organs, mechanism of breathing vary among different group of animals depending mainly on their habitats and level of organization. Lower invertebrates like sponges, coelentrates, flatworms, etc. exchange oxygen with carbon dioxide by simple diffusion over their entire body surface. Earthworms use their moist cuticle and insects have a network of tubes, that is tracheal tubes, to transport atmospheric air within the body. Special vascularized structure called gills, that is branchial respiration, are used by most of the aquatic arthropods and mollusks. Whereas vascularized bag called lungs, pulmonary respiration are used by the terrestrial forms for the exchange of gases. Among vertebrates, fishes uses gills, whereas amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals respire through lungs. Amphibian-like frogs can respire through their moist skin, that is also called as cutaneous respiration. Human respiratory system. We have a pair of external nostrils opening above the upper lips. It leads to a nasal chamber through the nasal passage. The nasal chamber opens into the pharynx, to a portion of which is the common passage for food and air. The pharynx opens through the larynx region into the trachea. Larynx is a cartilaginous box which helps in sound production and hence called the sound box. During swallowing, glottis can be covered by a thin elastic cartilaginous flap called epiglottis to prevent the entry of food into the larynx. Trachea is a straight tube extending up to the mid-thoracic cavity, which divides at the level of fifth thoracic vertebrae into a right and left primary bronchi. Each bronchi undergoes repeated divisions to form the secondary and tertiary bronchi and bronchioles, ending up in very thin terminal bronchioles. The trachea, primary, secondary, and tertiary bronchi and initial bronchioles are supported by incomplete cartilaginous ring. Each terminal bronchiole gives rise to a number of very thin, irregular walled and vascularized bag-like structures called alveoli. The branching network of bronchi, bronchioles, and alveoli comprise the lungs. We have two lungs which are covered by a double-layered pleura with pleural fluid in between them. It reduces friction on the lung surface. The outer pleural membrane is in close contact with the thorax lining, whereas the inner pleural membrane is in contact with the lung surface. The part starting with the external nostrils up to the terminal bronchioles constitute the conducting part, whereas the alveoli and their ducts from the respiratory or exchange part of the respiratory system. The conducting part transport the atmospheric air to the alveoli, clears it from foreign particles, humidifies and also bring to the air to body temperature. Exchange part is the site of actual diffusion of oxygen and carbon dioxide between blood and the atmospheric air. The lungs are situated in the thoracic chamber, which is anatomically an airtight chamber. The thoracic chamber is formed dorsally by the vertebral column, ventrally by the sternum, laterally by the ribs, and on the lower side by the dome-shaped diaphragm. The anatomical setup of lungs in the thorax is such that any change in the volume of the thoracic cavity will be reflected in the lung pulmonary cavity. Such an arrangement is essential for breathing as we cannot directly alter the pulmonary volume. Respiration involves the following steps: breathing or pulmonary ventilation, by which atmospheric air is drawn in and carbon dioxide rich alveolar air is released out. Diffusion of gases, oxygen and carbon dioxide across alveolar membrane, transport of gases by the blood, diffusion of oxygen and carbon dioxide between blood and tissue, utilization of oxygen by the cells for catabolic reactions and resultant release of carbon dioxide. Further, we read in cellular respiration chapter in class chapter number 12. Mechanism of breathing. Breathing involves two stages: inspiration, during which atmospheric air is drawn in, and expiration, by which the alveolar air is released out. The movement of air into and out of the lungs is carried out by creating a pressure gradient between the lungs and the atmosphere. Inspiration can occur if the pressure within the lungs, intrapulmonary pressure, is less than the atmospheric pressure. That is, there is a negative pressure in the lungs with respect to atmospheric pressure. Similarly, expiration takes place when the intrapulmonary pressure is higher than the atmospheric pressure. The diaphragm and a specialized set of muscles, external and internal intercostals between the ribs, help in generation of such gradients. Inspiration is initiated by the contraction of diaphragm, which increases the volume of thoracic chamber in the anterior posterior axis. The contraction of external intercostal muscles lifts up the rib and the sternum, causing an increase in the volume of the thoracic chamber in the dorsoventral axis. The overall increase in the thoracic volume causes a similar increase in pulmonary volume. An increase in pulmonary volume decreases the interpulmonary pressure to less than the atmospheric pressure, which forces the air from outside to move into the lungs. That is inspiration. Relaxation of the diaphragm and the intercostal muscles returns the diaphragm and sternum to their normal positions and reduce the thoracic volume and thereby the pulmonary volume. This led to an increase in intrapulmonary pressure to slightly above the atmospheric pressure, causing the expulsion of air from the lungs, that is, expiration. We have the ability to increase the strength of inspiration and expiration with the help of additional muscles in the abdomen. On an average, a healthy human breathes 12 to 16 times in a minute. The volume of air involved in breathing movements can be estimated by using a spirometer, which helps in clinical assessment of pulmonary functions. Respiratory volumes and capacities. First, we have tidal volume. Volume of air inspired or expired during a normal respiration. It is approximately 500 ml. That is, a healthy man can inspire or expire approximately 6,000 to 8,000 ml of air per minute. Now, in the same way, inspirator reserve volume, a person can inspire by a forcible inspiration. This averages 2,500 ml to 3,000 ml. Expirated reserve volume, a person can expire by a forcible expiration. This averages 1,000 ml to 1,100 ml. Residual volume, volume of air remaining in the lungs even after a forcible expiration. This averages 1100 ml to 1200 ml. By adding up a few respiratory volumes described above, one can derive various pulmonary capacities which can be used in clinical diagnosis. Inspiratory capacity, total volume of air a person can inspire after a normal expiration. This includes tidal volume and inspiratory reserve volume. Expiratory capacity, total volume of air a person can expire after a normal inspiration. These include tidal volume and expiratory reserve volume. Functional residual capacity, volume of air that will remain in the lungs after a normal expiration. This includes ERV plus RV, that is expiratory reserve volume plus residual volume. Now, vital capacity, the maximum volume of air a person can breathe in after a forced expiration. These include ERV, TV, and IRV, or the maximum volume of air a person can breathe out after a forced inspiration. Total lung capacity, total volume of air accommodated in the lungs at the end of a forced inspiration. These include residual volume, expirated reserve volume, tidal volume, and IRV and or vital capacity or residual volume. So this is for today only. We have covered this NCERT reading in two parts. Thank you for watching. I hope this helps you in just a quick revision or quick recap of NCERT.